Before I continue, I would love all of you. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Let me preface this by saying, I am not an adventurous guy. My idea of roughing it is when the delivery app crashes and I have to walk to the bodega. My name is Danny Liu, and my life's work is optimizing code for a living and optimizing my Steam backlog for a dying. I am, in the parlance of our times, a shy, extroverted nerd, which is to say, I love people. I just have no earthly idea how to talk to them without rehearsing it first in my head like a Shakespearean tragedy. The city was grinding me down. The concrete, the noise, the soul-crushing anonymity. I had this itch, a need for something real, something that wasn't a pixel or a notification. So I did what any reasonably online person does. I spent 6 months Googling how to be a normal human outdoorsman and watching videos of people whose lives look like a Patreon ad. The conclusion? Camping. Cheap, isolated, authentic. My budget, however, was a whisper in a hurricane, which is how I found Blackwood Campground. The online listing had cheerful, slightly blurry photos. Quiet family haven, rustic charm, only $15 per night. The reviews were selectively positive. So peaceful, wrote one. Felt like I was the only person on earth, wrote another. There were 0 photos of the actual campsites. A giant red flag I politely asked my anxiety to excuse. The drive into the Appalachian Mountains was beautiful, in a I'm going to die and no one will find my body kind of way. The cell signal evaporated by mile marker 12. The GPS, which had been confidently instructing me to turn right onto gravel road, simply gave up and displayed a sad, spinning wheel of death. I was following printed directions from the website, a piece of paper that felt like a cursed artifact. Blackwood Campground wasn't a campground. It was a clearing in a forest that seemed to be holding its breath. The mist wasn't just there, it was clinging, wrapping the towering, moss-bearded pines in a perpetual damp shroud. The only sound was the drip of water from everywhere, and the silence. A deep, porous silence that swallowed the distant creek's gurgle whole. And there they were, the Beatty's family. They materialized from the mist like a Norman Rockwell painting gone slightly rancid. James Beatis, the father, was a bear of a man with a smile so wide it made his eyes crinkle into happy crescents. He wore a plaid shirt that had seen better decades and gripped my hand with a paw-like warmth. Danny, welcome, welcome. You found us. Lena, get a load of this brave young man. Lena Beatis, the mother, fluttered over, her hands dusted with what I assumed was flour. Oh, a city boy, you must be exhausted. Don't you worry, we'll get you sorted. Her smile was just like James's, wide, bright, and somehow frictionless. It didn't touch the rest of her face. Then the kids. Lily and Joji, the twin boys, maybe 9 years old. They were identical down to the gap in their front teeth. They didn't walk so much as drift in perfect unison. Hello, Danny, they chirped in a weird, synchronized sing-song. We saved you a spot by the big pine, the quiet pine. And then Jessica, the oldest daughter. She stood a few paces back, arms crossed, leaning against a rusty RV. She was probably my age, with the same Beatis features but twisted. Where her siblings had underscored default happy, she had a permanent mild frown. Her eyes, a cool gray, locked onto mine. It wasn't a welcoming look. It was analytical, suspicious. She looked like a puzzle piece that had been forced into the wrong picture. He's here for the weekend? Jessica asked, her voice flat. Just a few days, Jess, James boomed, clapping me on the back hard enough to rattle my ribs. Recharging the batteries, right, Danny? Right, I squeaked. Recharging the batteries. They showed me to my site. It was a flat patch of dirt, conveniently close to their main cabin. which was less a cabin and more a collection of mismatched sheds and trailers bolted together. The big, quiet pine the twins mentioned was directly opposite my tent flap. I set up my ridiculously expensive, hyper-lightweight backpacking tent with shaking hands, feeling like a walking neon sign that said, "Victim." The first night, they insisted I join their welcome potluck. It was just the 5 of them, me, and one other guest. A middle-aged man named Greg Fens, with his sullen son, David. Greg was all forced bonhomie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. David just stared at his plate, earbuds in, radiating a please kill me vibe that I deeply related to. "So Danny, what do you do?" Lena asked, ladling something beige and lumpy into my bowl. "I'm a software engineer," I mumbled. "Ooh, computers," Joji piped up. "Can you make the TV talk?" "The satellite's been out for weeks," Lily added immediately, as if they were one person with 2 mouths. "But Jessica says the ghosts talk on the static." A beat of horrific silence. James laughed, a big, booming thing. "Kids and their stories. Now eat up. Lena's famous mystery stew." The stew tasted like damp socks and regret. Throughout dinner, Jessica said nothing, just watched. Greg kept laughing at James's terrible jokes, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped bird. David didn't look up from his plate. The twins feed each other in perfect, creepy symmetry. After dinner, James announced the traditional Blackwood campfire story. He led us to a fire pit already roaring with suspiciously dry wood. The mist swirled around the flames, making the shadows dance in a way that felt less like ambiance and more like something watching. "This one's a local legend," James said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that competed with the fire's crackle. "About a family, the Blackwoods, who owned all this land. They were peculiar, loved their privacy. Until one day folks started coming for the big fall festival and, well, some folks just stayed." He told a rambling story about missing campers, strange lights in the woods, and a seasoning process that involved learning the rhythms of the mountain. The whole thing was so cliché it was almost offensive. But the way the twins stared into the fire, their little faces blank, and the way Jessica was slowly, deliberately, sharpening a stick with a pocket knife, it curdled my blood a little. I excused myself early, blaming jet lag from the drive. As I passed Jessica on the way back to my tent, she didn't look at me. Her voice was a low, urgent whisper. "Your phone works, right?" No signal, obviously." "Check again," she hissed. "In an hour. By the old well." And then she was gone, melting into the mist. I spent the next hour in my sleeping bag, heart hammering, pretending to sleep. At what I guessed was the witching hour, I crept out. The mist was thicker. I found the old, boarded-up well she indicated. My phone, which I'd left on out of desperate hope, had one flickering bar. I opened the Maps app, downloaded the offline contour map I'd prepared. The GPS did pick up a signal. A weak, wobbling blue dot. And the map was wrong. It showed my tent site in a wide-open meadow. The reality was a dense copse of trees. The creek marked on the map was a tiny, stagnant seep. I was not where the map said I was. Cold, not from the mist, ice to my veins. The Beatty's family hadn't just given me a bad spot. They'd moved my location on the digital map. Or the map was wrong, because the whole terrain was wrong. The static on Jessica's ghost story wasn't just atmospheric. The next day, I tried to leave. I packed my gear, muttered something about a work emergency, and headed for my car. James was waiting by the trailhead, just a break in the trees. "Leaving so soon, Danny? The mountain's just getting started," he said, blocking the path with his bulk. His smile was still there, but it was tighter. I forgot my charger. Really need to check my emails." Lena appeared from behind a tent, holding a plate of cookies. "Oh, but you haven't tried the ant log cookies. We use real ant eggs, so protein-rich." I declined, my stomach churning. I tried the car. It started fine. I reversed, and James didn't move. He just stood there, smiling. I had to swerve around him, my tires crunching on gravel. In my rearview mirror, he just waved, the smile never leaving his face. The entire family stood in a row in front of the cabin watching me go, including Jessica, who gave a single, slow headshake. I drove for an hour. The mist never thinned. The road, a simple single-lane track according to my printed map, seemed to loop. I passed the same oddly shaped mossy rock twice. My phone had zero signal again. Panic, pure and electric, started to set in. I stopped the car, screaming into the void. "What the actual F?" A branch snapped. I froze. From the woods, I heard a familiar, dreaded sound. The gurgle of the creek from camp. But it was coming from ahead of me. I was driving in a circle. The Beatty's family had done something to the landscape itself, or my perception of it. Defeated, I turned the car around and drove back. They were waiting. No smiles now, just blank faces in the mist. "See? The mountain doesn't let you go so easy," James said, his voice devoid of its previous boom. It was flat, cold. "I want my money back," I said, trying to sound tough, and coming out like a deflating balloon. "Money?" Lena giggled, a sound like stones rattling. "Oh, Danny, we don't want your money." That night, the atmosphere changed. The forced cheer was gone, replaced by a tense, watching silence at dinner. David, Greg's son, was gone. Greg was gone. The twins didn't feed each other. They just stared at their plates, moving their food in perfect, identical circles. "Where's Greg? Where's David?" I asked, my voice thin. James looked at me, and for the first time, I saw what was behind the smile. A vast, empty hunger. They moved on, to a quieter part of the woods. They weren't real campers, you see. They didn't appreciate the rhythm. Jessica stood up. "He needs to see it." Her voice was firm. "Jess," Lena warned, a warning laced with something sharp. "He's already seen the map lie. He'll figure it out. Better he sees it now." What followed was the most horrifying comedy of errors I've ever witnessed. Jessica led me, not to the woods, but to the Beatty's utility shed. It was padlocked. She produced a key from her pocket. Inside, amidst rusted tools, were not camping supplies, but lab equipment. Old glass jars filled with murky liquids, faded Polaroids, and stacks of what looked like topographical maps, all covered in handwritten notes in a frantic scrawl. She threw one open. It was a map of the campground, but it was layered, transparent sheets over each other, the original topography. Then a layer of hand-drawn paths. Then a layer with little X's. One X right where my tent was, another where Greg's had been. A third in a deep ravine labeled The Gulp. "It's not a campground," Jessica said, her composure cracking for the first time. "It's a game preserve. For them. The mountain, it gets hungry. It needs a tithe, a few souls a season to stay quiet. My family, they're guides. They lure people out here, people nobody will miss, or people who just wander off. What happened to Greg and David? They got lost on the scenic Overlook Trail, which doesn't exist. They're in the Gulp. The mountain takes them, makes them part of the mist, makes them help with the next season. The comedy, the sheer absurd banality of the evil. These weren't axe-wielding maniacs. They were bureaucrats of horror. They had a system, a spreadsheet of missing persons with camping accident causes. The seasoning process James mentioned was literally just letting people get so disoriented by the manipulated geography and the pervasive mist that they walked into a sinkhole or off a cliff. And the family's cheerful, forced personality, it was a disguise. A social camouflage so perfect, so relentlessly nice, that no one would ever suspect them. The horror wasn't in a jump scare. It was in the realization that the smiling lady offering you cookies is calculating your exact location on a satanic map. The door behind us creaked open. James, Lena, and the twins stood there, holding flashlights. Their smiles were back, but they looked like rictus grins on skulls now. "Oh, Danny," Lena cooed. "You fiend the hobby room." "Jess, darling, you shouldn't have let him see the admin." "He was getting clever with his little computer box," James said, stepping forward. "And he saw the truth. Now he's part of the rhythm." I screamed. I grabbed a rusted shovel from the wall and wielded it like a talisman. "You're insane. This is a federal crime. I have GPS data. I have..." Lily giggled. "The mountain eats signals, Danny." Joji nodded. "Eats people too. It's fair." I swung the shovel wildly. James didn't even flinch. He just kept walking, that horrible smile plastered on his face. "This is the hardest part," he said, his voice soft, almost apologetic. "The new ones always fight. It's messy, but it's necessary for the balance." I ran. I burst out of the shed and into the mist. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran, the sound of their slow, deliberate footsteps behind me, not chasing, just following. The twins' giggles echoed unnaturally synchronized. I tripped over a root and fell hard. The world tilted. When I looked up, I wasn't in the campground clearing anymore. I was at the edge of a deep, ugly ravine. The scenic Overlook Trail. At the bottom, I could see something pale and unmoving. David. And standing next to him, looking up at me with a face full of pity, was Greg. But he wasn't Greg. His eyes were wide, milky, and his mouth was stretched in a silent, permanent scream. He pointed a trembling finger at me, then at the mist behind me. I turned. The Beatties family stood in a half circle, blocking the path back. But they were changing. Their smiles were widening impossibly, stretching their faces. Their eyes were beginning to go that same milky, vacant white. Lena's hair seemed to be turning to strands of gray mist. They weren't just hiding evil. They were becoming the mountain. They were its anchors, its shepherds. Jessica was at the front, her eyes clear and terrified. "Run, Danny," she screamed, but her voice was cracking, merging with the wind. "Don't let them season you." But I couldn't run. I was at the edge of the gulp. James stepped forward, his face a serene, horrifying mask. "The balance must be kept," he intoned, his voice no longer his own, but a chorus of whispering wind and dripping water. "You saw the maps. You know the rhythm. Now you are the rhythm." He reached for me. His hand was cold, damp, and smelled of loam and decay. In that moment, with the mist swallowing me, the silent scream of Greg below, and the unblinking milky eyes of the Beatties family closing in, I had one triumphant, absurd, final thought. Note to self. Next time, just get the effing Airbnb. The last thing I saw before the world went white and silent was Jessica, her human fear finally breaking through the family's terrible mask, lunging at her father, screaming, "No, not another one!" Then only the mist and the rhythm. Author's note. And so, dear reader, we leave Danny Lou, a shy, extroverted nerd who just wanted some authentic nature, as he is absorbed into the perpetual whispering mist of Blackwood. The Beats family, now fully merged with the Hungry Land, will resume their work. A new shiny van with a van life decal will pull into the clearing next week. The website will update, fresh availability, rustic charm enhanced by seasonal mist, and the cycle continues. Maybe you too should check your offline maps, and for God's sake, be wary of families who are too cheerful, especially if they offer you ant egg cookies.